So we have worked with quadratic functions in the past in Chapter 1, and now we're going to talk more about the quadratic function and the parabola. So you've seen some of this before, and you may have seen it in other classes, but as we know, we have, when we're talking about functions, a quadratic function, we could have a parabola that maybe goes like this, or we could have a parabola that maybe goes like that, okay? And then we know the basic one, in our toolkit functions, that would be the equation for just a basic one without any transformations. Okay, now, a parabola has a vertex. So the vertex is, in this case, the lowest point, and in this case, the highest point. So that would be a vertex, and this would be a vertex. And it's an ordered pair. So I'll just write ordered pair. The axis of symmetry, the axis of symmetry always goes through the vertex. So it's a vertical line, and that would be the axis of symmetry here. And sometimes I get lazy and write AOS for axis of symmetry, and that would be the axis of symmetry there. Okay? I don't know if you can see those. I can make it a little bit darker, but it's not part of the parabola, but it's a characteristic of the parabola. The axis of symmetry says if you fold your piece of paper along that axis, along that line, that vertical line, then the points on the left are going to match up with the points on the right. That's a characteristic of a parabola. So the axis of symmetry is written as a vertical line, x equals, and then there's going to be some number here. Now we're going to talk more about that in a couple of videos, but anyway, that's what we've got so far. We also know that we could have, let's say I have this parabola looking something like this, and maybe this parabola, so now I'm putting in like the Cartesian coordinate system there, okay? Trying to, looks something like that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about intercepts. First, let's talk about the y-intercept. So y-intercepts are when x equals 0. So if you can remember that, that will help you find the y-intercept. So in this case, there's a y-intercept right there. And in this case, it looks like the y-intercept is right there. So it's where it's where the parabola is crossing the y-axis. And your parabola is always going to cross the y-axis. Now, you might not always see it. It might be way up or way, a really high value or a really low value, but it is going to cross the y-axis, okay? The x-axis, though, is the x-intercepts, that's a little bit different. So let me scroll up a little bit. You can see that I have, I don't know the colors, you can see that I have x-intercepts, like here's an x-intercept and maybe here's an x-intercept. X-intercepts. It's where it's crossing the x-axis. Okay, now it kind of looks like for that graph, the y-intercept and the x-intercept are the same, and that can be. Now, what do we have over here for x-intercepts? Where is it crossing the x-axis? Well, it's not going to cross the x-axis. So in that case, there are no x-intercepts, okay? So sometimes we have x-intercepts, sometimes we don't have x-intercepts, okay? And it's not necessarily if it's right side up or upside down, it just depends on the picture and what they give us, okay? So sometimes parabolas will intersect the x-axis and sometimes they won't. All right. When you want to find x-intercepts, then you set f of x, you set your function equal to 0, okay? Now, they use some terms somewhat interchangeably. We were talking about x-intercepts. Those are also referred to as the roots of the function or zeros of the function. And what we mean by zeros is we're saying when does f of x equal 0? So let's say you have a quadratic function, I don't know, 3x squared plus 7. If you want to find the roots or the zeros or the x-intercepts, any of those three, you're going to set it equal to 0. Okay? And then you have to solve it. Okay. So that's the terminology. And just remember, sometimes they're going to say roots, sometimes they're going to say zeros, and sometimes they're going to say x-intercepts, but you find all of them the same way. Okay?